Hi, welcome back. For this session, we're going to look at our WordPress dashboard and go over some basic settings that you should always look at for just about every website that you're going to create using WordPress. I've got two tabs open. I've got my front end tab. This is my Web Design 2 WordPress shell. I've got my dashboard open in another tab. That way I can bounce back and forth between the two and take a look at the differences. While I'm here on the dashboard, I want to concentrate down here on settings. Depending on what you've got installed in your WordPress, you might have more buttons here in this nav bar. You might have something about maybe a custom theme that you've got or some other plugins if you've tried to play around with those at this point. But settings generally is going to be almost all the way at the bottom, no matter what. When I hover over settings, I see the 6 different choices there: general, writing, reading, discussion, media, and permalinks. But there can be more here as well. When we install some other things, specifically plugins, there might be some specific plugin settings that we'll see here later. So don't get too attached to this menu and try to memorize everything that's on it. There may be this and more. Okay. So I want to focus on these 6 different general settings or the default settings that are here and just kind of look at what you should and should not change. If we click on settings, it'll go to the general settings. The site title is Web Design 2 and the tagline is just another WordPress site. Generally, the site title you will set up when you install WordPress onto your server. The tagline, however, is just another WordPress site all of the time. If you go to the front end, this is my title and just another WordPress site. That's my tagline. So perhaps I want to change my tagline to VISC 210 Visual Communications. If I go ahead and save the changes and go back to the front end, I'll see that my tagline is now changed to something different. So that's just a basic setting you should always do. The next couple down says WordPress address URL and site address URL. These two right here. And these are the addresses to your WordPress installation. Never, ever, ever, never, ever change these two. Leave them alone. If you change them, it actually tells your database that WordPress is installed in another directory. And if your WordPress is not installed in that directory, it's going to break. And it's going to be very, very hard to go back and change it. In many cases, you'll actually have to go back to your server and log in as an SQL administrator and change the database directly. If you've never done that before, it's quite confusing. So my advice to you is leave these two blanks here alone and don't change them. The only time I think you'll probably ever really change them professionally is if you need to move your WordPress installation to a different place on your server. If that's the case, there is a procedure to go through and it's very, very precise, and right now is not the time to go through that. So for right now, just know don't change these two. Things are going to get bad if you do. Below that, we have our standard email address. Then we have a membership area. By default, WordPress allows you to have multiple members on your site. This can be a tremendous asset to your website, but you really need to explore some of the deeper membership options and maybe some of the membership plugins before we go down that road. If you want to choose anyone can register, you can. If you're just beginning, my advice is to leave this unchecked for right now. There's also what role all new users are going to be. If you don't check this, and this doesn't matter at this point, we'll actually go through these 5 in a different session. But if you do choose anyone can register, make sure you leave subscriber checked. There's different levels of hierarchy as far as permissions go, and you certainly don't want to give anyone that's signing up on your site any sort of privileges to change this website. If you choose anything but subscriber, that's essentially what you're doing. The most powerful user is administrator, which is what we are. When we're logged into the dashboard, we're administrators right now. If you were to give someone else an administrator role, they could potentially delete you as an administrator and take over your site. So it's very, very important that we leave this subscriber. even if we do check this, leave it subscriber. You've got a few more options about your date and time zone and format that you want that to show on. And you're certainly welcome to experiment with that, but it's not really completely necessary. So on general settings, the only real thing that we're changing at this point is our tagline. That's really all we have to change at this point. Let's go down to the next option under settings, which is writing. Under writing, we've got a number of choices here as far as how we're going to write to our WordPress blog or our WordPress website. The only real thing here that I think is interesting is the default post category. You know, we talked about categories and tags in a previous video, and by default, everything goes under uncategorized. Once you've established maybe a working model of what you want your blog to be about, you might change this to be something else besides uncategorized, because you have to have a default category, and it does show up. So it looks kind of unprofessional if uncategorized is your category. Default post format is also something you can experiment with. This is something with one of the latest versions of WordPress, one of the latest upgrades. There's different looks and layouts you can do to your post, and these are some of those. Standard really is the best to start out with, but certainly you have the ability to change that if you'd like. There's also some choices down here as far as like how you'd like to post things to your WordPress. You can do it via email, which, you know, it's cool that there's an option for that, but I think really the better model for that, if you're going to post from a distance, would be to download the mobile app. That is a little bit more efficient and easier to follow. So in this case, I'm not changing anything unless you want to change your category, and you can go down to the bottom and hit save for that if you'd like. The next category down is reading, and this is a really interesting area. The first option here says front page displays, and we've got your latest post or a static page. Now remember what the word page means in WordPress terminology. A page is sort of this static, non-changing, it's almost like an HTML page. It's not going to get updated very often. So if you want to make a home page that has your standard, thanks for visiting this site type of information on it, you could go make that page under pages, give it a name of home, for example, and you could say, hey, I want my front page to be a static page. I want my front page to be Alan's sample page, for example, or maybe you want it to be, home or whatever you call your home page. If that's the case, WordPress needs to know where we're going to put all your posts. You need to have a main post page, and a lot of websites will simply throw this under a page called blog. To do that, it's very simple. Just go to Pages, Add New, call it Blog, and leave it blank. Don't put anything on it. And at that point, you could say, hey, I want my post page to be this empty blog page, and WordPress would handle the rest. It would automatically populate all of your blog posts onto this empty page, and then you would have to make some sort of navigation to get to it. So this may be something that interests you, and maybe it doesn't, but that's a really, really good option that you need to be aware of, because a lot of the clients I've had professionally will want that front page to be static and to not just be the latest blog post. Also, how many blog posts do you want to see at a time? 10 is the default. Maybe you don't want that to be there. You could also choose whether or not you want to show all of the text or just a short excerpt or summary in your blog feed. But really this front page displays is the big option here. The last checkbox is search engine visibility. You've got an option here to discourage search engines from indexing your site. That doesn't guarantee the search engines won't find it, but there's not a lot of good rationale behind not wanting to be found by search engines, unless you're just wanting to maybe have the search engines leave you alone until you get the site figured out. But it typically takes weeks, even months, for search engines to find you and go through your site and read everything. So I certainly would not want to discourage search engines. I want my site to be found. That's the point of making it. So don't see a reason to check that at all. The next link down is discussion. And these are the settings for people leaving comments on your site, on any of your blogs or pages. And there's a lot of checkboxes here to go through, and I'll let you go through that at your leisure. But one thing that you might consider is if you don't really want a lot of comments on your site, you can check the users must be registered and logged in to comment. On the general page, we chose to not allow anyone to register. So if you check this and you say, hey, to leave a comment, you've got to be registered, and then you don't allow anyone to register, you're effectively not allowing anyone to comment on your page. So that might be something you'll choose for now. You also might look at the comment author must fill out name and email. That's a great option. It's more than likely you will get comments. You'll get some spam in here. You'll get people that are wanting to sell you fake Louis Vuitton purses and all sorts of different things. So I do try to put up as much comment protection as I can. Right down here under before a comment appears, this is where you can specify where or how you want the comments to show up. Comment must be manually approved is a great thing to check there, because that means you will see and actually click the word approve on any comment before it shows up on your site. That way you're not going to get spam actually showing up on the front end of your site that the rest of the world can see. So that's a great option to check there. But you can go through these at your leisure and play around with some of these areas. The next one down is media. Generally not a lot to change here. We've got this media button up here that lets us import images into a library. This just sets up their default sizes. In most cases, you're going to be bringing in the images at the size you want them to be set at anyways. That's something you should do in a graphics application like Photoshop even before you get here. So generally, I don't spend a lot of time changing any of the default sizes. The last one on that list is Permalinks, and this is a crazy important setting to change. All of your posts are going to be organized in its default method, and it's not pretty as far as the URL goes. You can look at some of these examples of what URLs might look like, and they're easy to follow, but it's just not easy to remember to type in. It's also not super good for search engine optimization. There's a whole career field out there in nothing but search engine optimization, helping people get their websites found by web search engines like Google and Yahoo and Bing. One of the best methods for this is post name. And even though it says post name, it'll also do page name, category name, tag name, all by choosing post name here. That makes your URL a little friendlier. So if we choose post name, and I'm going to go down here and hit Save Changes. When I go back to the front end now, I'll refresh my site, and when I click on any of my posts, look at my URL. The name of this post is Alan Sample Post, and that's what it says up here, instead of some generic P equals 123, where it's the 123rd post or whatnot. This is really, really, really a great way to set up your permalinks. Generally, I try to do this towards the beginning of my WordPress setup, and I use post name every time for my clients now. I don't use any other method. It's a great, great way to make your URL friendly for search engines and people alike. You can see some of the other options, like by day and name, for example, where 2014 and 07 and 02, you could reverse engineer that and say, okay, that's the 2nd of July in 2014. So on. But this is really just post name is a great way to go. So that's more or less the settings that you should look at, and a little bit extra that you can do there as far as pages go for your front page, and permalinks is a wonderful, wonderful thing. One last thing about permalinks and that I want to show, and to do that, we're going to have to go up to one of our posts or one of our pages. If I go to post, for example, and click on Alan's sample post, right underneath the title, you'll see a permalink. If you decide you don't want the permalink to be that, you can hit edit right here and change that. So it changes the address of that post or of that page completely. So even though we can specify the default is like the post name or the page name or the tag or the category name, We can come in here and customize this by simply hitting the edit button on any given post or page. So you see on this individual post, I've got an edit button there. Going out to pages and click on my sample page, I've got the same thing there. So you can change the actual name of the page any way you want. So you get a lot of customization abilities with WordPress. It's a wonderful tool. Hopefully that clears up some things about settings. Again, you should work on the settings pretty close to the beginning of your setup, and hopefully it'll take care of some confusion down the road. So thanks a lot for checking this out.